video to show you the AWS basic WordPress deployment using the Kaholo tool. This is automation of build out of an AWS environment to run a WordPress server. What this is going to do is create all of the AWS infrastructure you need to run the WordPress instance based on some configurations that we're going to put in. And then basically enable you to set up your WordPress site as you wish. So that includes creating a VPC, which is a sort of a virtual network within AWS, the subnet, a security group which controls access to the WordPress instance, a public IP that we're going to associate with the WordPress instance so it's available on the internet, and the WordPress instance itself. And then at the end, there's an option basically to send a message to a Slack channel. You can obviously take what you want from this. You don't have to run the whole thing. You can delete the components of this that you don't want, or if you've already got a VPC set up, you know, you can play around with it. But this kind of does it end to end. So what we need in order for this to work, we have to put in a few configuration options on the configurations tab. The region and the availability zone are key. Because this is just a single instance, we're only going to put this in a single availability zone. The public IP of your machine is recommended because that will allow you to connect via SSH if you need to. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it particularly, but it just basically is a security measure to control who can access your instance at that level. You can find your public IP simply by going, what is my IP to Google, and it will come up with it there. Next, we will, in fact, let's put that in now. I'm working in an office, so I'm not too worried about people seeing that IP. And yes, the next thing that we need also is the WordPress AMI, and I'll show you quickly how we can find that. So the region, I'm going to build this out in US East 1, which is North Virginia, and I'm just going to put it in availability zone A. You can choose whichever you choose, but you know, it's up to you. So the way that you can tell that, if we go into AWS here, you can see the regions that are available throughout the world, and you can see there what the code is for the different regions. So for example, if you were building in Ireland or London, you could use EU West 1 or 2. Similarly, obviously, if you're being in Japan, you can choose Tokyo there, or wherever is relevant to you. So I'm going to build it in North Virginia just because I've got nothing deployed in North Virginia at the moment, so it's easy to separate it out. The AMI, in order to find that, if we go to the AWS marketplace and just type in here bitnami-wordpress. Bitnami is a company that produces a kind of a standard WordPress image within AWS. So when that comes up, hopefully soon, there we go. What we're looking for is just the standard WordPress certified by Bitnami and Automatic. So we can pick that, and that will give us basically the latest version here. So 5.9.2.16.R2. So if we copy that, and then I've got a text file kind of ready set up here, and attach that to the end of this Bitnami WordPress here, we can then, using the owner ID, which I've got here, and I can put this in the description of the video, we can go back to AWS, and within AMIs, we want to search for public image, put in our search criteria, so that's the first one, and then we can restrict it right down by putting in their owner code, and that should give us, there we go, there's the AMI ID that we need. So if I copy that and then put that into my Kaholo configuration. Now you can play around with the rest of these. I've just got some basic naming tags. So name for the generic tag, it's what it's going to call the instance, the VPC tag, the subnet tag. The VPC ID, you can change that if you want to. If you're not sure what any of this means, I'd recommend just leaving it as default. and then the size of the instance. So I'm starting with T2 Micro because that is in the free tier within AWS. So if you're just playing around, it's a good one to choose. Obviously, you might want to choose a larger one. If you choose that one, you can always change it later on within the AWS console, so it's not set in stone. And then the Slack channel. So I've got Slack installed here, and I've just got a channel called Kaholo notifications, which I've created, and that's where it's going to send it to. So that's that. So if we save that configuration, the other things you're going to need to set up within Kaholo are the vault. You will need to set up a secret key and an access key. You can do that within AWS, and that is basically something that's associated with your IAM user in AWS. If you're not sure, I'll just Google how to set up an access key and a secret key, and you'll find the secrets, the way of doing that. I'm not going to show you those because they're obviously quite, they are things that are very security conscious. If someone gets hold of that, basically, that they can build anything in your environment. So you want to keep a close drive, but you'll need to set those up and set them into your pipeline, which you've imported here. So that's what we need there to get this kind of working. With that now set up, we can basically execute this pipeline and watch it build. So I'm going to do that now. And here we go, and it's going to start creating the components. So you can see when it's green, that means that it's worked, and it's created the VPC, it's created our security group, it's created our actual WordPress instance. It pauses here. That's because if we look at AWS now, we will see that there is an instance created, which is great, but it's pending. And what it needs to do is associate a new public IP, a fixed public IP, with that instance. So it just pauses while kind of AWS basically sorts itself out. So we should see this as running as and when. It tends to take between sort of 10 to 30 seconds. This pause is actually for 60 seconds. That's something you can configure within the Kaholo application. So if you're finding 60 seconds isn't long enough, you can change that. Hopefully it's going to work. There we go. We've gone to running now. So that means that that's now working. So when this moves to the final stage, associating the public IP, that should work. And here we go. And then we go. We've got a green, and then it's finished. And look, there we go. We've got a Slack message that tells me that it's complete. So that's great. That's all worked. So what does that mean? What that means is now, basically through no kind of fiddling around, I've built a WordPress instance here that's running. Now it's going to take a little while for that to actually get up and running. So if we open the public IP, we'll probably find it won't work to start with. And we'll just wait for that to come. There we go. So it's not working at the moment, but basically we just need to give that a few minutes for that to come up and running. So I'm just going to pause the video while that's happening. Hi there. So right now we've got the system up and running now, and the easy way you can tell, you can see the status check is now showing to 𝗪𝗓 pass, so that shows that the instance is up and available. And if we go back to here, what we'll get is this error. Now this is just because we're connecting to the IP address. Obviously, for this to go live on the internet, you'll need to get a proper domain name, DNS entry set up, and a certificate. But that's another problem which we won't tackle in this video. But what we can do is we click advanced, we can just proceed through that error. Don't recommend you do that generally. And here we can see WordPress and it's up and running. Now to connect to the admin page, we just type admin at the end there, and that takes us to the admin page. The username is user, but we need to get the password, and we get that through the AWS console. If we right click on this new instance and do monitor and troubleshoot and have a look at the system log, and it comes up, and this shows us basically what's happened. A heck of a load of text. Don't worry about most of it. What you're looking for is a big box, here we go, in the middle here, where it says setting bitnami application password to the default application as user. So if we copy that password and paste that in here, and there we go, we're into the admin page, and we can start configuring WordPress. Now, for those that are interested in the SSH component, if you don't know what that is, don't worry too much about it, but you might need this at some point. If someone is troubleshooting your website, this is something they might need. What you will need is something called an SSH private key in order to be able to connect to the instance via SSH. Now, I talked about the security aspect that we've put in, and I talked about the public IP. What you'll notice here is we are allowing port 80, which is HTTP, port 443, which is HTTPS, 000. That basically means anyone on the internet can access the server, and that just makes it available on the internet. So you want those ports to be open. Port 22 is the SSH port, and that's what you use basically to get into the instance if there's a major problem with it. And that is actually what they call whitelisted to my public IP. So I can only access this instance from where this location, basically. So if you need to change that in the future, you can just click into, you're on the security tab here, click into the security group, and then you've got an edit rule here, which allows you to kind of change that, and it allows you just to set it to my IP as well. So if you're in a different location, you can just click here and it will tell you, it will change it to the IP that you're at. Obviously for me it's the same, I've not moved. And then you can just save that. If you needed to add, say, a developer or someone else that you're getting to help you with a website, you can add the rule. You want to choose the SSH component, and then basically just type in, you'll need to ask them for their IP, type that in, and then save, and then they will be able to access. Now, in order to then actually log on, we need what we call the private key, and that's actually come out of Kaholo because we created it as part of this whole process. And you can see there's a create default key pair here. So in order to get this out, basically the easiest way is if we download this file, the final result file, and then we can open it. Now, I recommend a tool called Notepad++ to do this next part because it just makes life very easy. It is something you can just download. It is free. I can put the link again in the description, and you can just download the latest version and install that. So once you have that tool, you can then open that. So if we go to our downloads and open this file, and then when you've installed Notepad+, you'll have that as an option to open it with. Now, one of the first bit that you want basically is this key material section. You can get a plugin in Notepad++ called JS Tool, which you can install, and it basically just formats JSON files so that it'll be easier to read, so that you can see just the key material bit. So that's the part we need, this begin RSA private key. If nothing else, just save that file somewhere safe, and then you know you've got it if you need it. But if you want to actually make it useful for now, just take that component. We want to get rid of the quotation marks, and just literally all we've got is the begin private key section and the end private key section. And then we just need to make this in a format that AWS accepts. So if we do a replace function here, search replace, and this is pre-populated for me. To keep it here, you want this extended mode switched on. You want to do a search for /n and replace with /n. What's that's going to do is replace these bits where there should be carriage returns and actually put them in place. And there we go, that's done it, you see. So we've now got our private key in the correct format. And if we save this as a new file, anywhere will do. We'll just save it to downloads for now. Obviously, just keep this safe. Don't give it to anyone unless you want them to have access to your instance, basically. So we'll save this as WordPress pen. Pen is the best format. That's kind of what it's going to be expecting. So we save that. There we go. Now, what we want to do is make that usable for a tool called 𝗵𝗵. So to do that, you need to install the 𝗵𝗵 tool. Again, that is just a free download that you can get. If you just Google 𝗵𝗵, you will find it. And there is an app within 𝗵𝗵 when it's downloaded called 𝗵𝗵𝘅. Find 𝗵𝗵. I could have just searched. I always forget to do that. There we go. I can show you there. So 𝗵𝗵𝘅. So all we can do, if we load our private key that we have just saved, it won't show up, so we just need to find it. Show all files. There we go. There's the WordPress pen file. Open that up. So it's imported it. It's in a foreign format. So what we're going to do now is save it in the 𝗵𝗵 format. Now, I would recommend putting a passphrase on your key. It just gives you that little bit of extra security in case someone gets hold of it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. In fact, let's do it. I'm only going to put a very basic password in. I'd recommend you put a complicated password in. I'd also recommend a tool called KeePass, which you can store all passwords in securely. It means you only have to remember one password. Again, that's another free download. But let's just put a password in, and then let's just save that private key. And we will save that as WordPress. What you're going to see now is it's going to save it as a PPK, which is a 𝗵𝗵 format. So we'll save that there, and that's done. So now we're going to open our 𝗵𝗵 tool and connect to our instance. So to connect, we need to get the public IP of the instance. So let's copy that and paste that in the hostname field. We need to put in the username that we're going to connect with. You do that on the data section here. The username for this instance is bitnami. That's just the standard username that it uses. And then we need to, under the SSH auth section, we want to browse and find our new private key, which is there, and do that. Now, if we go back up to our terminal window, go back up to our session window, we can save that. I've got kind of one saved. There's default kind of saved here, but let's call it something else. Kaholo test 2. We can save it, and then basically, if we ever want to connect to this in the future, we can just load that up and open it. And that will, first of all, because it's the first time it's ever connected, it's just going to check and make sure that you trust the host that you're connecting to. So we can say accept there, and it uses the username, and then it's going to prompt us for our passphrase because we put that passphrase in. Type that passphrase in that we saved it with, and there we go. We're logged in by SSH to our new instance, and we can do whatever we need to do at that level. And that's it. We've got a working WordPress instance, and yeah, all good. I hope that's been useful to you, and obviously if you've got any questions, please post them in the comments and I will try and get back to you. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye bye.